evening to you. I'm Julie and welcome to Booksmart. Today's book is a celebrity memoir, Entrances and Exits by Michael Richards, better known as Kramer from Seinfeld. I'm a Seinfeld fan. My parents started watching it the second or third season. My college friend and I easily caught up with it with all the reruns that were played constantly. I'm easily amused by very little, so a show about nothing was right up my alley, even if there's more to life than making shallow, fairly obvious observations. I had no idea Michael Richards had written a memoir until it was listed in one of my Barnes & Noble emails. No one's a bigger idiot than me. I'm never in the know about trends and new releases, which most of the time is fine by me. In short, Richards is a lot like Kramer. The beginning of the book goes back and forth, jumping from Seinfeld to the past, then eventually narrating the story chronologically. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I've been seeing this with a lot of memoirs, especially the newer ones. It's as if the writer or publisher feels that readers will get bored if the story starts at the beginning, so it ping-pongs back and forth. I don't mind the jumping around, but if its sole purpose is because readers will get bored, that's a shame. Our attention span has decreased over the years thanks to our digital world. Richards has a touching narrative style, down to earth yet introspective. He's an introvert, which is always odd for me to hear that actors can be introverts. I related to much of what he said regarding being around people, needing to be by himself and process information. For a celebrity memoir, it was so refreshing to not have a braggart for an author. He's out there and he's loving every minute of it, without all the narcissism. I won't give you all the details about Richard's childhood, but he never knows his father, which he finds out his mom lied to him about. I'll tell you this because it was in the news. Richards was conceived from a rape, something he doesn't learn about until he's practically middle-aged. Something that is so enviable about Richards is his surety of the paths he takes and of his choices, even at a young age. He signs up for the Vietnam War knowing full well he will not get sent to Vietnam. He actually becomes part of the acting troupe, the Army's Training Roadshow. When he's discharged, he starts doing comedy acts, runs into all the best-known comedians, or at least those that will be known, Robin Williams, Jim Carrey, Jay Leno. I fashioned comedy to ballroom dancing. It's such a small club that everyone crosses paths at some point. Richards' first major show is Fridays, which I've never seen. Jerry Seinfeld knows of Richards through Fridays, as does Larry David, since he was also a writer on Fridays, see Small World, and Seinfeld handpicks Richards for the role of Kessler. Kessler is not a well-developed character, allowing Richards to develop a backstory for him. Kessler was based on Larry David's neighbor, yet Richards was told little about the character, only that he has a ponytail and is agoraphobic. I'm going to let Richards tell this part of the story, and I need to wear my glasses because I'm weak. Here's how Kramer developed. I'll fill out the characters so Larry and the writing staff will have more to go on. Larry will see this new, improved character Kramer better than ever and write him more substantially into the show. Or will he if I don't have a ponytail? Ha! Stop complicating things. For the most part, it's all about getting the laughs. I'll do just that. I'll change my approach from a slow-moving Kessler to a more ramped-up Kramer. Okay, I'm up for the 4 shows. Giddy up. Oh, something else. Kessler's dog is gone. In the pilot, my first entrance was preceded by a dog who ran into Jerry's bathroom. He's getting a drink, I quipped. It was a line that I improvised. Now that we're back, I can do more with that dog. I'll bond with it, actually have the dog live with me, train it. We'll become a kind of comedy team. It's the only question I have for Larry right now. What about the dog? Larry shrugs it off. Too much of a hassle. Absolutely true. I'm way too rambunctious. In the pilot, no one expected that unreliable pooch to enter and then run into Jerry's bathroom or really right off the set. My throwaway line was covering the dog's erratic exit. As W.C. Fields once said, never work with animals or children. I was going to live with the dog. Enough. I've got more to do improving this character. Suddenly I get a feeling for Kramer's disposition. If I can't have a dog, I'll be a dog. This is how the new character will start off. I'll play the guy as a dog coming into Jerry's apartment as playful, friendly dogs do, a dog spirit bounding through the door, sniffing, curious, wondering what's going on in here. What's everyone doing? What's everyone talking about? Who wants to play? Where's the meat? Let's eat. Isn't that just fabulous? Because that's exactly what Kramer is like. It's perfect. And remember when Kramer has the cough and Jerry treats him like a dog to get him to go to the doctor? I love that episode. And you might have noticed Richard's writing style. It sounds like Kramer, as if Kramer was telling us the story, so you can see how much of Richards was actually in Kramer. No actor likes to be known for just one character, as if the actor and the character are one and the same, but you can see how Kramer emulates who Richards is. And Richards seems to embrace the iconic character that Kramer became. Throughout the book, he even uses some of the best Seinfeld lines. Richards shares some hilarious stories about how he responded to situations only to have people tell him how brilliant he was and funny he was for acting like Kramer out in public, even though that was not his intent. And you also might have noticed from the excerpt I read that Richard writes in the present tense, a very tricky thing to do to keep consistent, especially when most often we are writing about the past. It's like he's telling us a story, much like Kramer, and he uses a lot of exclamation points, which Elaine would approve of. But it works because Kramer speaks as though much of what he says would be punctuated with exclamation points. Writing in the present tense fits with Kramer because rarely did Kramer worry about the past. Writing in the present fits Richards well too because Richards is always embracing his current truth and seeking out the next truth, the next adventure, a new understanding of a past event. That is something I learned about Richards through Entrances and Exits. He's very new age, mystical, philosophical, seeking out an understanding of who he is in this world. He's hard on himself when he makes mistakes. I don't know if I'd call him a perfectionist, but he's critical of himself when he freezes. As an introvert, he obsesses over these failings. The second Emmy he won, he froze and just said thank you. Here's what he writes about that Emmy Award show and how he processed it. I come down hard on little old me for locking up at the Emmys. It's better to look into the lessons and trying. Backstories aren't just about acting. What's going on in back of me is just as important. Whatever it is, I feel it's in back of everything. I'm not clear on this yet. Extroversion is at hand. Most of me feels like it's all out there, pulling me out of myself to meet it all. It's a two-way street. An inner and outer that tugs on me, takes me back and forth like the tides of the sea or the course of the seasons. I live in a kind of fear of this. I'm not sure why. This upsets me. I'm not well. There must be something wrong with me. Why can't I thank people who I work with? I stand so nervous before the world. Why do I fail to come out and meet others joyfully? I live split off, separated from my humanity. It's embarrassing me. The good side of this is that I'm aware of it. I've got to go easy on myself. Take it one step at a time. It's all that I can do. Trust in thy will be done. I'm a process unfolding. It will be years from now until I know what is lacking. Facing the world out there, I'm just not coming through well. I feel so unrelated. I'm split off. From what just happened, I'm in the shadows. The shadow runs right through it all. It's always a day and night around here. The opposites tugging on me. I don't have much middle ground. As an introvert, it's so relatable. Richard uses statements other people tell him and repeats them throughout the book, which I actually love that as a narrative choice. I'll let you read the book to understand their meanings, but here are some of them, and they're spectacular. Live for the boy. Sometimes a person has to go a very long distance out of his way to come back a short distance correctly. Come out from behind the character and let the audience see you once in a while. My pockets are full. Don't get too thin, eat. Enjoy it while it lasts. If you take the bread, you will have to give something back. A Christmas tree that has just a few bulbs on it and no lights. Richards doesn't go into too many details about his wives. He's divorced and remarries, or his children, keeping intimate details about the important people in his life in the vault. You will get some fascinating behind the scenes of some of the great Seinfeld episodes, like he bought many of his own shirts, he created many of his falls, he made the red lamp in his apartment, yada, yada, yada. One of Jerry's favorite Kramer moments was the chicken roaster, one of my favorites too. One of Richard's favorite episodes was the Merv Griffin show, another one I loved. Richard tells us how scary the guy who played Elaine's father was. It's Fright Night. That's why they never had him on again, and how he wished Kramer's mom would have been a recurring character. Richards doesn't give us too much about George and Elaine, but Jerry comes up occasionally and even wrote the foreword in the book. Richards admits that he didn't join the other three at lunch or dinner, preferring to meditate on breaks. After 9 seasons, Seinfeld ends, Richards does write about the incident, his racist language and onstage meltdown during one of his comedy routines. The sea was angry that day, my friends. Obviously, it's toward the end of the story, By now, as readers, we learn a lot about who Richards is. He's fallible, just like all of us. He makes mistakes, just like all of us. He says things he shouldn't, freaks out over something stupid, and suffers shame, regret, and embarrassment. We've all been there. He's human, just like the rest of us. He's not a menace to society. When you see a person's vulnerability, as we do when we read a memoir, it's easier to forgive, to practice empathy, to realize that we all have done or will do something just as grievous and reprehensible. And maybe even some of us practice the idea of, it's not a lie if you believe it. I remember when it happened and I rolled my eyes thinking how stupid and how so far from Kramer it was. You can stuff your sorries in a sack, mister. Yet we've all done stupid stuff, and with social media nowadays, it spreads fast. And why should Richards have to live up to Kramer? Richards in part created Kramer, but they aren't synonymous. Had Richards done something like this more recently, he may have been canceled forever. But thankfully, it's just more like the jerk store called. Richard grows, seeks inward, and rises beyond it. It's touching to read about his continual transformation throughout his life. It's inspiring, and I think it's centered me a bit, a gentle reminder that we all have our crap that we're going through, that a little kindness and understanding go a long way, that forgiveness is a powerful tool we don't use enough in our society. Kramer wasn't the master of his domain on Seinfeld, but I think Richards is the master of his domain in life. If you are a Seinfeld fan, you obviously must read Entrances and Exits, a snazzy title that is so fitting for Richard's story. If you're not a Seinfeld fan, I would still recommend it because Richards teaches us many lessons through his own mistakes, through his own learning, through his own evolution. I do think the book could have been a bit shorter. In the acknowledgments, Richards said that the book started out over 600 pages long with a 72-page appendix that contained his spiritual practices. And on a side note, I commend Richards for not having printed a memoir anywhere on the cover of the book jacket, as this was certainly an autobiography. While he does call it a memoir in his acknowledgments, I assume that most people don't read that part. But I think more could have been cut out. He spends way too much time developing Howard, a guy during his time in the military, and a bit too much background on some of his spiritual practices. The story stalled a bit for me in those places, but overall I found Entrances and Exits a delight to read. I'm going to end this episode of Booksmart with a passage in the book about comedy, a classic Richards passage where he throws a little snippet out to you, and you're left to ponder the magnitude of the idea, which was something I loved about his book. I just adore when memoirs give you so much to think about in the world in which you live and your own life. In the real world, a few short-sighted psychiatrists conduct a study assessing Kramer's mental state. Performing a lobotomy by getting rid of comedy altogether, they diagnose Kramer as a paranoid schizophrenic. I wonder how they would have assessed the Marx Brothers, especially Harpo, or Chaplin's character the Tramp, or Tati Hulu. I suppose they'd suggest comedy in general should be put in a straitjacket. Were that true, what kind of world would we be living in? Serenity now. Thanks for watching. As always, my goal at Booksmart is to get a little bit smarter, one book at a time.